This is Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top questions and things you struggle with most so you can have more energy and less decision fatigue about what to eat, how to move, and you can change your thoughts to flip 50 with the life and the energy you love in the second half. And I am extremely excited and honored to introduce you to my guest today, Dr. Joel Fuhrman. Dr. Fuhrman is a board-certified family physician, nutritional researcher, and 6-time New York Times best-selling author. He serves as the president of the Nutritional Research Foundation. Dr. Fuhrman has authored numerous research articles published in medical journals and is on the faculty of Northern Arizona University Health Science Division. His 2 most recent books are Eat to Live, Quick and Easy Cookbook and Fast Food Genocide. Dr. Fuhrman, welcome and thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure, Deborah. Happy to be here.
I'm so excited to introduce you to my listeners. And listeners, I want you to know I had the pleasure of hearing Dr. Fuhrman in person at a recent medical fitness tour in San Francisco. And one of the things that really caught my attention, of course, as a fitness professional, was a quote by you that exercise is the only way to speed metabolism without accelerating aging. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Certainly. Well, I know that people think they want to keep their metabolism fast so they can eat more food and not get heavy. But the reality is that we age at the rate of our metabolism. And we really should be trying to keep our metabolism as slow as possible so we can eat less food and not get too thin. Because eating excess food obviously drives the rate at which we age as well. So the point I'm making right now is there's no pharmacologic way to speed up the metabolic rate with a drug or the natural herb that is not going to also have you age faster. On the other hand, if you exercise multiple body parts through the week, maybe you do pushing exercises one day, pulling the next, gait exercises the next day. The point is you have multiple body parts that are engaged and become metabolically active. And metabolically activating muscle tissue maintains their increased caloric needs for up to 10 days. So you have all these members of your baseball team, each one of them working synergistically to continue to burn more calories through the week, keeping your body fat lower without slowing the aging process. So what I'm saying right now is there's no other way to have a favorable metabolism. You can't get it from a drug, you can't get it from an herb, and you can't get it from food. The only way you can safely keep your metabolism activated is by the regular use of exercise. So the chemical means and pharmacologically, we want that type of metabolic rate to be slow, because when we take in moderately less calories, just a little less calories, it slows their metabolic rate. And that's our basal rate, not our muscle rate, but our basal rate, which means we're aging slower and maintaining our cognition, our function, our intellect into our later years. So our body temperature might get a little lower, our thyroid might get a little bit slower, and our respiratory quotient, the amount of calories lost through breathing, goes down when we just eat a little less calories to keep our body fat relatively low, and we can moderately and comfortably keep our calories in that favorable range when we're eating these foods that have a lot of fiber, have a lot of micronutrients, have a lot of water content, that satiate us, turn down the appestat without giving us a lot of calories simultaneously.
That is an entire shift of thinking. I mean, my guess would be when you're in the room, there are a lot of people thinking, wait a minute, this is not exactly what I've been promoting. So on one hand, I feel like you've rewarded me as a fitness professional. I am one of the people set in a space where I can really help people. On the other hand, I feel a little thrown under the bus we've all been telling people, we want to speed up our metabolism. And I totally understand what you're saying, but it's definitely a shift. You're swimming upstream a little bit. I mean,
right. Let me just give you some of the recent research findings are that when you eat more frequently, more frequent eating as a means of keeping metabolism high, It increases the inflammatory markers, your diabetic parameters, and increases risk of cancer. When you eat less frequently, particularly if you stack your calories earlier in the day and go to bed on an empty stomach, which means finishing dinner by 5, 6, or 7, having a 3-hour window, trying to have a 13-hour catabolic window of no food at night. It slows your metabolism down when you sleep. It makes your body detoxify more. But a recent study, for example, it followed thousands of women with cancer, with breast cancer, and those that had an increased 13-hour window had a 36% lower risk of dying of breast cancer compared to those with a shorter catabolic window or less than 13 hours. That means they ate a later dinner. You found they had more food later at night, so they had less of a time with no food coming in. So critical to this moderate caloric restriction, critical to this concept of eating a diet that's rich in micronutrients and rich in phytochemicals and antioxidants is also not eating all night long, not eating late at night, not constantly putting food in your body. Your body needs that resting period with no food coming in, because that's when detoxification and self-repair and DNA repair and immune system surveillance is enhanced. The body can seek out abnormal cells for removal. It can protect broken DNA crosslinks. It can remove toxic waste products and reduce AGE and improve and lower your blood sugars and insulin sensitivity. All these parameters are improved where more time is spent in the non-feeding state.
Love it. Very, very clear. And I want to ask one question in regard to exercise. So although I tend to agree with you, I think there is a line here we need to make as a distinction. Coming back to exercise is the only way to speed metabolism without accelerating aging. Of course, I love that, but I also am a realist. Would you agree that there are certain types of exercise or maybe overdone exercise that actually can accelerate aging?
I agree with that. Yes, it's that exercise is beneficial to a certain point, but exercise places a stress on the body. But that is a good stress because it builds a little more free radicals and has some effects to put a stress on our tissues and build up metabolic waste like lactic acid. But the compensatory benefits outweigh that stress. And the compensatory benefits, more efficiency of tissue, less conservation of energy when you're not exercising, increased antioxidant potential of cells. There's all types of extra detox and compensatory benefits to exercise. However, when you get past a certain level of exercise, the stress overwhelms the compensatory benefits, and you don't have a chance for the body to recover from that stress fully before you're exercising it again. So I would say, just as an example, that being a triathlete, where you're running 50 miles a week and swimming, 50 miles a week, and you're, riding out, when you're doing all, like when you're intensely pushing yourself, especially at a world-class level. And we have some data, for example, on world-class and Olympic-class cross-country skiers, how much they train and how that actually causes heart damage later on in their life. So you can push yourself to a point where exercise becomes unfavorable.
Got it. Great. Thanks for that addition. All right. Now, I want to dive into some vocabulary terms that are coined by you, potentially. Nutritarian. What is a nutritarian diet, and what do you think it can do?
Well, what I'm saying here is that these advances in medical science and nutritional science over the last 2 decades give us the knowledge we have right now to win the war on cancer. We don't have to have people getting breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer. We could virtually wipe out cancer across the world right now if we wanted to do it, except people don't like the answer. You know what I mean? So the answer, we have it. It's like telling people that we're going to smoke 3 packs of cigarettes a day for 30 years, and then we're going to invent a magic pill that's going to obliterate your need for lung cancer, your risk of getting lung cancer. It's never going to happen. We're not going to enable smoking to be good for people. It's not living in a fantasy, in a fairy tale. The same thing is true with breast cancer and colon cancer and all the common cancers we're getting. We can't just eat pizza and burgers and French fries and sweets and maple syrup and croissants and cookies and junk food and soda and eat cancer-causing elements and expect we're going to invent some pill or medical treatment that's not going to get breast cancer? Never going to happen. However, if you eat properly and your diet is 80% of calories from unrefined plant foods, and you're eating your greens and beans and onions and mushrooms and berries and seeds and flax seeds, and you're eating all these foods that have hundreds, each one of them have hundreds of studies documenting their anti-cancer effects and their ability to protect against breast cancer. And when you put together a dietary portfolio that includes all of these powerful anti-cancer foods, and you remove some of the most causative foods in your dietary portfolio, then people won't get cancer. And it's so powerful that we're even doing studies that show that people who have early stage cancers are able to reverse them when they eat a diet full of G-bombs. And I said that term, G-bombs, G-O-M-B-S, which stands for greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds. So people can easily remember those foods with the most documented scientific data showing they have the most powerful cancer protective effects. And that's literally how we can activate and how people can achieve this anti-cancer lifestyle right now, today.
Fabulous. Okay, so let's come back to this. So I love this statement that you said, we could wipe out cancer right now. People don't like the answer. There's a lot of scientific studies with conflicting messaging. And then we could get into the whole, there's social media, there's media, period. But how do listeners know what to believe?
Well, that's pretty easy. That's not that hard. But let me just say this, that I have to say that if you look at all the evidence, in other words, my job is to review maybe all 1,500 to 2,000 scientific journal articles coming out each year on human nutrition. Like I have to have read all 1,000 of them, let's say, over the years, maybe, all the 20,000. And when you've reviewed all of them, they don't conflict with each other. It's just if you isolate one and you don't know how to interpret it, it looks like they conflict. And the way the media presents it, it looks like they conflict. But almost all the major nutritional scientists in the world today are in agreement that your diet has to be rich in unrefined fruits and vegetables to live a long life. And that every study, we can compare, donuts to eggs and say, well, eggs are better than donuts. And that means eggs are good, right? Well, that's just a study. It's not saying that. The media will come out and say eggs are good. But that study didn't say eggs were good. It just said eggs were better than donuts or eggs were better than refined carbohydrates. It didn't say that eggs were good. If you compare eggs to beans, then eggs look bad. So it's just the way the media interprets it and how people are interpreting the studies. If you look at all the studies, we know what's the best foods for longevity. And so here's the studies we give more credence to. The studies that use many thousands of people simultaneously in the study. So large numbers of people. Number two, the study has to go on for decades, 15, 20, 25 years, so we can see hard endpoints that like death or cancer or heart attack rates. When we're looking at studies with low numbers of people, soft endpoints like weight loss or triglycerides change or other body parameters, and they're not looking at hard endpoints like death, I can feed a person Twinkies and give them a cookie diet, and because they're sick of eating so many Twinkies or just eating white rice, they're sick of eating so much white rice, they'll reduce their caloric intake because they're bored of eating just the same food, and they'll lose weight, and all the parameters look better in the short term. But follow those people for 30 years, and we'll see they'll die young because their diet didn't have enough phytochemical variety and didn't have enough fatty acids, didn't have this and that in it. So we to really ascertain the benefits of a program, you have to look at people doing it for many, many, many years. And when we do look at those studies and isolate the studies, let's say there are 30 studies that meet that criteria, then they all show the same thing, and they consistently show that the more unrefined vegetation people eat, the more beans, the more greens, the more nuts, the more seeds, the more berries, the more of these healthy foods people eat, the longer they live and the slower they age, without any controversy. Every study shows the same thing. Beans in particular are not controversial. In the Nurses' Health Study, they were the food that linked to the lowest risk of breast cancer, that the women who ate the most beans had the least cancer. In all the blue zones, where the longest lived peoples and the most centenarians live, the same thing, more beans, longer lifespan. And all the studies show that beans as a source of carbohydrate on a hierarchical, you put on a hierarchical scale of quality, looking at the glycemic effect, the amount of slowly digestible starches, the amount of resistant starches, the micronutrient density, and the fiber content all show the same things, that beans are the most favorable carbohydrate source, and they're also richest in protein. And the studies also show that, in complete agreement, that the more plant protein a person eats, the more unrefined plant protein from greens and beans and seeds in particular, the longer a person lives compared to the amount of animal protein. That when people switched from reducing animal protein and in place substituting more plant protein like broccoli and beans and sunflower seeds and almond, when you move from animal protein to plant protein, we extend human lifespan dramatically.
And when you say, just to clarify, when you say extend human lifespan, you actually mean extend healthy human lifespan.
That's right. We can call it Healthspan, and the World Health Organization calls the term healthy life expectancy, which means it combines how long you live with the quality of your life in your later years. Both those things are considered in those measurements, those parameters.
Thanks for clarifying. And I want to correct myself from that last question. So, asking how hard it is and what do we believe? And potentially the question is this: maybe it's not what we believe or know to be true, but why do people have such a hard time changing the way they eat?
That's the question. I mean, you know what it is that people like to continue to eat the way they're eating. They like what they get used to eating. They eat that way because they like it. Their taste buds and their brain adapts to it. And they generally looking for rationalizations, even if they're false and delusional, as to why they should maintain it. So if you like to eat a lot of meat, you're going to look for all the people telling you it's okay to eat a lot of meat because you want to be told that. And if you like to eat a lot of eggs every day, you're going to look for all those studies that make eggs look good. And if you want to salt your food, you could find a whole group of people on the internet that are going to tell you salt is good and low salt is bad. And you're going to want to keep doing your salt. It's amazing. People want to hear supportive information to continue their unhealthy and dangerous habits. And it's like everybody has a bias, a predetermined bias, and they interpret the literature that way. I've spent a lot of time and work and effort to try to not have any predetermined agendas. But the point is, I'm saying right now, is that food is extremely addicting, but it's more addicting the more unhealthy it is. You don't get addicted to broccoli. You don't have any predilection to want to continue to look to, okay, you're going to eat broccoli. In other words, but the more the food has rapidly absorbable carbohydrates, the more you concentrate those calories, increase the sugar content, increase the oil, make it more caloric dense, so you get a rush of calories in the bloodstream, fry it, do something. The more unhealthy it is and the more calorically dense it is, the more it signals dopamine receptors in the brain, and the more a person gets a stimulatory high, like they took a drug, and the more they want to protect their own addictions and are looking for excuses to do so. So it's very hard for people to revamp and radically adjust their diet because they become so emotionally attached to it.
Okay, so controversial issue right here, and you brought up this question as something that you just said, the more oil. And so what is your take on healthy oil or our need for healthy fat? Right now, that's pretty popular and sexy. What do you say to that?
Well, I'm saying to you that we have to really know the difference between the word fat and the word oil. Now, first thing we have to all agree on is that fat on the body is unhealthy. Fat drives unfavorable hormones. It raises angiogenesis promoters and it makes you insulin resistant. It promotes cancer. It raises estrogen levels secreted by fat cells, which increases breast and prostate cancer. So we know that excess fat on the body is very unhealthy. And that means excess calories are unhealthy no matter where they come from. And oil is 120 calories per tablespoon. And the average American is taking in between 400 and 600 calories from oil a day, which may not be so bad if they were working 8 hours behind a heavy iron plow, behind an ox in the fields all day, burning 3,000 to 4,000 calories. It may not be so bad, but sitting on their butts on computers, that's impossible to burn that off. And I don't care what kind of oil it is. So calories kill us. Excess calories kill us. The second thing is we do need a certain amount of fat, but when you eat a nut or a seed, it's not oil, it's fat. The oil would be the processed food extracted from that whole food. And we take the oil out of the almond. Now we have no fiber, no bioflavonoids and anthocyanins, none of those sterols and stanols that bind fat, that bind saturated fat and carry into the stool. And also, the oil from the almond doesn't ratchet down the apostat because there's no fiber or bulk associated with it, no weight, no water content. You take the 120 calories of oil and you still need the same amount of calories at the meal. It added 120 calories to the meal. But if you put the almonds as the source of fat instead of the oil, the weight, the bulk, the sterols and stanols, which swell in response to moisture in the stomach, and the amount they suck fat out of the villi, they stuff the capillaries, transmit fatty substances through the serum into the digestive tract, sucking out saturated fat and LDL and oxidized LDL into the stool for removal, lowering the cholesterol. What I'm saying right now, and the calories were not all biologically accessible because the almonds may put fat into the toilet bowl, so you got your body got the signal at 850 calories, but you only really absorbed 35 to 40 of them. The point I'm making right now is that walnuts compared to walnut oil, sesame seeds compared to sesame oil, we can't compare the food to the extracted processed food from that food because they have completely different and even opposite biological effects on the body. So everything you hear from people about healthy fats and healthy oils is wrong. It's always healthier to eat the whole food that oil came from than eat the processed oil from that food.
Enlightening. I love that. So good. Thank you. Great clarification. Okay. So I've got a question for you. So I can't tell completely. I can guess, but so much better to get it from you. Do you advocate any animal protein? Do you yourself take in any animal protein?
Well, when you say, do I advocate, it has to do with what are these persons' needs, right? Mm-hmm. And we know that generally speaking, as a population goes down to lower levels of animal protein, probably to the 5% of total calories. By the way, all the blue zones, the longest lived people in the world, all eat less than 10% of calories from animal products. Apparently, if there were no supplements available, as you go to zero animal products, your diet would then become deficient in B12 and would, for many people, become deficient in DHA, which is a limiting fatty acid that the majority of people would be low in for optimal brain health later in life if their diet was completely vegan. Because the ability to absorb zinc from a vegan diet is only about 25% due to phytate absorption. A little bit of extra zinc might be encouraging longer life in a vegan as well. So the answer to your question is, it might be true that a properly supplemented vegan diet might enable the majority of more people to hit 100 years old than one that contained animal products, but only if it was properly supplemented, number one. And number two, it appears that, we don't have data, but it appears that when you have a low level of animal products in the diet, in the 0 to 5% or 0 to 7% range, you're probably going to have all the benefits of a vegan diet, or at least, it's not going to be much different. The data we do have on the Seventh-day Adventists show that those vegans who ate no nuts and seeds their diet was very low in fat. They didn't live as long as the vegans who ate nuts and seeds, and they did not live as long as the flexitarians, the non-vegans eating a little bit of animal products who ate nuts and seeds, lived longer than the vegans not eating nuts and seeds. And the same thing we saw in the Adventist Health Study 2, published in March of 2018, that more nuts and seeds in the diet and more plant protein sources led to a longer life. Now, there are some individuals, because of their high intake of animal protein or digestive disturbances or their general health issues, that are going to have their protein bioavailability and absorption go down with aging. And for those individuals, their IGF-1 levels and their skeletal mass might get too low as they age, especially above the age of 80. And they might have a requirement for a little bit increased animal products over maybe that 10% max I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting right now that most likely 0 to 5% is maximizing lifespan for most people, but some may require a little more if their IGF-1 dropped too low, because the American IGF-1 is ratcheted up into the cancer-promoting levels. We're pushing growth hormones to so high with so much animal product consumption that these higher consumers of animal products are getting tremendously higher rates of cancer. But the other issue is that if you go too low and you become a completely vegan to lower your IGF-1, in some people who don't assimilate protein well as they age, their IGF-1 could become so low that it could also accelerate cancer and body and musculoskeletal weakness. So it's understanding that we want to minimize animal product exposure, get the full benefit of the high phytochemical containing plant proteins that are more longevity promoting, reducing animal products to very low levels, and then monitoring that to make sure you're doing the right thing. And if you need a little more animal products, put a little more animal products in.
Perfect. For listeners, Dr. Fuhrman, would you just backtrack a little bit and give them a quick synopsis of the role of IGF, insulin growth factor, just so that listeners are sure that they grasp exactly what that is?
Sure. We're talking about, for a diet to be maximally lifespan promoting and anti-cancer, it has to be hormonally favorable. And the hormones we're talking about estrogen is important too, because body fat produces excess estrogen and shortens your life. And we're talking about insulin too, because body fat makes you insulin resistant and makes your body produce more excess amounts of insulin when you're overweight. And if you eat too much high refined carbohydrates like white rice and white bread and sugar and honey and maple syrup, then you're going to push insulin and you're going to shorten your lifespan. But the third important hormone is insulin-like growth factor 1, IGF-1, which is promoted in excess from the excess amount of animal protein. Because when you get so much animal protein coming to the bloodstream, it can't be converted into fat that efficiently. So the body, utilizes it, tries to excrete it, and it produces extra ammonia and urea and uric acid to get it out. But the high flood of animal protein in the bloodstreams get converted into growth-promoting hormones like IGF-1, raising that to excessive levels. And it's a growth hormone. And when we're no longer growing as an adult, that extra growth is turned into the promotion of things that shouldn't be growing, like tumors and cancers. And we know with many hundreds of studies, actually, that higher levels of IGF-1 are linked to higher rates of cancer. And higher levels of animal protein in the diet are linked to higher levels of cancer. So the paleo diets, the ketogenic diets, the Atkins type diets, we know that those diets are proven to be exceedingly dangerous for long-term health. But we're also saying that because the average American runs an IGF-1 that's way too high, and the average American is eating 30% of calories from protein or more. And some of those diets are advocating 50 to 70%, which is really crazy. That's completely irresponsible. And people focus on getting bigger. We're the shortest lifespan of any person in North America. The most shortest lived occupation are linebackers on football teams who overeat animal products and animal protein, and sometimes maybe even taking steroids to get that big. And so bigness is not the criteria for the health. Actually, excessive largeness shortens lifespan tremendously. Nevertheless, getting back to the question, the optimal IGF-1 is probably between 100 and 130. It's probably optimal. So the Americans are way too high. Maybe it should be, maybe 100 to 150 might be more ideal. But there's also some people as they age could drop their IGF-1 to 40, 50, or 60, which is too low, and they need more protein. Now, a nutritarian diet is designed to be very rich in plant protein, using a lot of these high plant protein foods. So we're still maintaining that 60 grams or 30 grams of protein per 1,000 calories, let's say. But we're doing so with more plant protein, less animal protein. But a person would only require to add animal protein to get their IGF-1 high enough. Once they eat the diet that's a diet that's high in plant foods, a plant-rich diet, but it's also augmented with these higher protein plant foods like beans, like edamame, like hemp seeds, like sunflower seeds, like broccoli. So we're already getting a lot of protein through plants. And then if that's still not enough and the IGF-1 is low, then you could use a judicious amount of animal product to supplement that. But I'm saying so much what we see now is we see people don't thrive on a vegan diet, so they wind up going back to a high animal protein diet. Or they don't thrive on an animal protein diet, they go back to a vegan diet, which is not well designed, they don't thrive on that either. The point I'm making is that we have to give people a diet that's a nutritarian diet, which has enough protein in its vegan form, even for a toddler or an elderly person. A lot of these vegan diets aren't rich in protein and fat sufficiently for toddlers and the elderly. But then if they're not thriving and they do need more protein, then you use animal products judiciously. You don't use a huge amount of them. You use them just enough to bring them to because then you overshoot IGF-1 and you lower the profusion of antioxidants and phytochemicals, and then you're doing the opposite and you're causing damage the other way. So we're trying to be more conservative, more cautious, more scientific, and adjust the diet to the individual's needs to make sure they maximize their lifespan.
Great summation. So if I can even further bring that down, what you're looking for with IGF is we want the sweet spot right in the middle.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay. So you have something really exciting going on. So before we wrap up, I don't want to miss the opportunity to tell listeners about what you're doing with retreats in California, and tell us how it works and who comes and how long they stay.
Right. You brought it up earlier that, how hard it is for people to change. And I mentioned earlier how food addiction can be so powerful that people wanting to continue to imbibe in things that are not good for them. And I want to save people's lives, and I enjoy that tremendously. So what I did is, because I know that a lot of people know they shouldn't be, 30 pounds or 100 pounds overweight. A lot of people know it's difficult to maintain, to get the weight off and to keep it off forever. So what we do is I have a beautiful retreat with a really top professional staff, and people go into the retreat and they stay there for 4 weeks, 8 weeks, or 12 weeks. And I do encourage a 12-week stay for people with serious medical conditions or serious overweight or high blood pressure or type 2 diabetes. And I literally can guarantee that they are free of diabetes and they're free of the high blood pressure and they're free of heart disease and they lose their body weight. In other words, when they leave, they're all better. They don't need medications anymore. And then they're taught how to make food taste great, how to make healthy foods taste great. They got rid of their food addiction. They retrained their taste buds to like healthier food. They've got the emotional skills and the psychological training to not to have to emotionally overeat anymore. So by having those long-term stays available to people, I can really assure they're going to stay. They're going to enjoy this and stay consistent with it when they leave and maintain the benefits. Because so often people go away to these health spas or health retreats and they eat healthy for a week, they drop some weight, and they come back home, they go back to their old way of eating. They can't control themselves. A week wasn't long enough to train them to adequately enjoy this and to how to do it, incorporate in their lifestyle for the rest of their life. So I'm so excited. I have just opened this place about a week ago that I've been working on for a long time. I did have a place before, a long time ago. And I always in my practice had a guest house near my practice. But now I have this gorgeous setting in San Diego where I can accept people as a guest for 8 weeks or 12 weeks, and I can assure them that I can have them closely monitored and have their dietary needs adjusted to them, make sure they get results. And we can essentially, what I'm saying right now is nutritional excellence is the best medicine. It's 100 times more effective than drugs. And we can really miraculously change people's health and make them, and add tremendous years to their life. And this new Eat to Leave retreat I set up is a fantastic and exciting project that's enabling me to do this with people.
I love it. Fantastic idea. I have one last question for you. And that is, what is your why? What put you doing what you're doing right now? Is there a personal motivation?
Well, I was on the world figure skating team. I always loved athletics and being healthy. I got into good, excellent nutrition when I was young, and was excited about it. Decided to pursue this career, but I didn't really know at that time I'd have so much personal reward and satisfaction having affected so many thousands or even millions of people to improve their health. I just feel this is the most fun and the most self-satisfying career to motivate and to educate and to change people's lives for the better. It just is the greatest thing. And I like being personally involved with people too, and watching them metamorphosize right before, I could say, I'm just so excited about watching them change and get their health back and get their weight down favorable and start to get healthy again and be active. I've got people who were faced with a leg amputation, who with diabetes and who got back healthy again, or people with lupus who now don't have lupus anymore, and people with psoriasis, where the psoriasis is gone, and people with and so many hundreds of people with diabetes who are not diabetic anymore, not spending tens of thousands of dollars on medication, going in for medical, invasive medical procedures, and dangerous things happen to them. So nutrition is so powerful. It's so exciting. it gives you the thrill of being a physician that you're really achieving miraculous results with people and not just dishing out drugs when watching people deteriorate their health.
Fantastic. Dr. Fuhrman, thanks so much for your time today.
My pleasure. Good luck to you, of course, and all your listeners.
Oh, thanks. And listeners, if you have a question that I missed today, leave it below the show link at flipping50.com and join us on the Flipping 50 TV Facebook page to get all the juicy resources, the ways to connect with Dr. Fuhrman, and some pictures giving you a glimpse at what it would be like to be at a retreat. You can visit the show link and make sure that you look at flipping50.com. It's going to be at /Dr. Joel Fuhrman. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave us a rating in iTunes. It really helps us spread the word about how to change the way we age. And then share this with a friend to surround yourself with a supportive community of women on the same journey. What are you waiting for? Start Flipping 50 today.